The Honourable David Parker.
Well, that does deserve a reply. That member used broadband repeatedly in respect of her dealings with Cameron Slater, where she showed herself to be morally bankrupt, which is why she is now on the back benches.
Point of... yes. Thank you. The member stated that asked us to withdraw that comment.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
No, I asked you to withdraw the comment.
Point of order.
Order. The member has taken offence. Any member can take offence, and if a member takes offence, I'm asking the member to withdraw the comment.
I withdraw the comment. Mr Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, Honourable David Parker.
Could you please tell me which of my comments was unparliamentary?
The member took offence. It's not to me to judge. The member took offence that statements were made, and she brought it to my attention, and on that basis I've asked you to withdraw the comment, which you have done, and now we'll proceed. Honourable David Parker.
That member who just criticised the person outside of the House who was unable to defend themselves was removed from her post as a minister for disreputable conduct. There were about 5 or 6 instances.
I was not removed for disreputable conduct.
That is a debating point, and that is a debating point, and we're going to proceed. Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The first of which was the conflict of interest that she used in respect of Aurovita, which was a company in which her husband got paid by, and she took steps to advance the interests and then lied to the media and misrepresented the position to the Prime Minister, having showed herself...
Order. Honourable Judith Collins.
I seek leave to make a personal explanation in accordance with the rules in relation to the accusations made by the Honourable David Parker.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? There is no objection. The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, Mr David Parker is quite incorrect. I was not removed for disreputable behaviour. In fact, I was asked to resign on the basis that I was accused by way of an email to somebody else, from someone else, nothing to do with me, where there was an allegation for which I was utterly cleared by the Chisholm inquiry. In addition, Mr Parker has long commented on Mr Pleasance. That matter has been dealt with by the Privacy Commissioner. I've been cleared of that as well. I was cleared by the Cabinet Office of any conflict of interest, and actually Mr Parker knows that well. He, of course, did resign as Attorney General.
Now, all right, we're now on the Telecommunications Development Levy Bill, and I'll ask all speakers from now on to concentrate on the substance of that debate. Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What rubbish. That is not correct at all. History shows that is not correct. Mr Speaker, this bill is said by the government not to be in the nature of a tax. We heard that from the Minister at first reading and at second reading. Yet in the departmental's own disclosure statement, they are asked a form question. It says, does the bill create or amend a power to impose a fee, levy or charge in the nature of a tax? Bold writing, in capitals, page 8, yes, yes. The Minister then said that this would not result in any increase in charges to consumers, and yet already we have a release from Spark saying, yes, it will. The average person's bill will go up by about $1 every month, $12 a year for an increase in a connection fee. To quote Spark, the bill for this from the government to Spark averages out at almost $1 per month for each of our consumer and business broadband and mobile customers. So that's for people who are using bandwidth both in broadband at home and also through mobile devices. Mr Speaker, everyone, I think, in this Parliament recognises that the roll-out of broadband is a good thing. No one disputes that. What we do dispute is the competence of this government, who just months ago were saying that it was only going to cost $10 million a year in respect of this particular cross-subsidisation to roll it out across rural areas. Whereas now they're saying that that cost is going to be $50 million per annum. This in an environment which, as the government says, is virtually zero inflation. So in an environment where inflation is running at zero, how come the costs have ballooned so that the cross-subsidy that has to be paid through this mechanism has risen from $10 million per annum to $50 million per annum? And the answer is because they're doing it incompetently. And that is also apparent from the fact that the Rural Broadband Initiative is being ignored by some consumers who are going around the side of that, not getting the subsidy or the cross-subsidy, which is available through the Rural Broadband Initiative, and instead they are, without subsidy, going about their business and using wireless technology, getting broadband. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why we're opposing this. If the government had come to New Zealand at the start and said, look, this is the full cost of the rollout of broadband, there will be some cross-subsidy between cities and rural areas to ensure that rural areas will get it, I think all New Zealanders would have gone along with that. We certainly would have on this side of the House. But then to come along and pretend that a failed rural broadband initiative that is now coming in over the original budgets, obviously, and isn't doing what it was originally promised to do, and to come to us and say, oh, look, please, there's nothing happening there that needs scrutiny, well, we just don't buy that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, here we are under urgency. We heard one of the prior speakers from the National Party throwing off at the release from the New Zealand Telecommunications Forum, the TCF. That release complains that this is being introduced under urgency, and I'm quoting this bill is being introduced under urgency and doing so avoids any public debate. That's why this is being done under urgency, not because it's urgent. This doesn't have effect until next year, so it doesn't need to be done under urgency. Now, they slag off that. Do you know who the writer of that press release was? Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne, the former Chief Executive of the Parliamentary Service. He knows how parliamentary processes are meant to work. That's why he's critical of this being done under urgency. He also notes that it extends a tax which to date has not been explicitly recovered from consumers, and therefore that they can't continue to absorb the tax. Mr. Speaker, the Minister will soon be sitting in the chair in the committee stage, and I want the Minister to stand up and tell me that I'm wrong when I read out the regulatory impact statement at paragraph 4.2, which says, does this bill create or amend a power to impose a fee, levy or charge in the nature of a tax? And it says yes. If she can tell me how I'm misreading that. Because I can't reconcile that with her statement that it isn't in the nature of a tax. So, I don't know. I mean, this is the Minister of Environment who seems to think dirty water's clean water. Or she was when she was Minister for the Environment, so maybe there's some consistency of principle between those two ridiculous statements. But I want to hear, and I also want here to say that she's still contending that there is going to be no on-charge to consumers, because I can't work that one out either. Now, I know they have... What's that? I know the industry says there is. I've read that out already, as you did earlier, Mr. Clark. Dr. Clark, it's absolutely clear that this will result in an increase in charges. It is a tax. It is because the government's financial performance is so poor that they can now no longer absorb this through the Crown balance sheet. That's essentially what's happened. They were going to pay some of this out of Crown finances, and their mismanagement of the economy is such that they can now no longer afford to do so, and so they're going to charge what is effectively a tax on consumers. That's what's happening here. The government haven't consulted on it. They say that they have. I've got no doubt that they consult regularly with the community. But again, in their regulatory impact statement, the departmental disclosure statement, they say that they haven't in respect of this. That's confirmed by the telecommunications industry. in their releases out today. So again, I'm going to expect the Minister to be saying how she can justify those comments when her departmental report says it's wrong, and we've had 2 releases from both the industry body generally and from our largest telco, Spark, to say that that is not the case. Mr. Speaker, I just want to return to this issue of how incredible it is that they need another $50 million or another $40 million per annum when inflation is running at virtually zero. How does that happen? How does that happen? The Crown says the reason that they're not hitting surplus is that we've got such low inflation that people's wages aren't going up as high as they thought they would be, and therefore they're not collecting as much tax. And there's a little bit of truth in that. We all acknowledge that in low inflation, wages and costs don't go up by as much. So how could you, in a zero inflation environment, need to come along to this House and seek authority for $50 million per annum? And I tell you what, it's because they're incompetent in telco. We saw it with the Chorus fiasco last year when they were going to override the regulator, when they were trying to help out their mates at the big end of town. The telcos came out and they spoke out against the government at that stage. And what are they getting at the response? Because they spoke out last time, they're now getting whacked with a levy of $50 million because the government didn't like them exposing the incompetence of the government, the telcos exposing the incompetence of the government last year in the telco space in respect of Chorus. Mr. Speaker, that's why the Labor Party is opposing this legislation, not because we oppose the rollout of broadband in rural areas.